So hello again, everyone. I'd like to officially welcome you to today's webinar, The Importance of the VAD in VISTA Projects. I'm Jessica Birch from the Corporation for National and Community Service, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. And I'll also be facilitating the live Q&A at the end of the session. Also joining me off-site are Amy Kanata, Rachel Raddick, and Jenny Farrell from our partners at Education Northwest, who have helped to prepare today's webinar and will be managing the WebEx technology. You'll also see them in the chat and Q&A to help address questions you may have during the session. So myself and Amy Kanata are your main speakers today. As I mentioned, I'm Jessica Birch from the VISTA Training Unit here at the Corporation for National and Community Service. Amy Kanata and I will be co-presenting today, and Amy has been engaged in various national service projects at Education Northwest and has been working with VISTA since 2008. For the past 4 years, she's been focusing on supporting the work of VISTA supervisors by developing resources for the VISTA campus, designing and delivering webinars, and writing curriculum for the supervisor orientation. So, what would Amy and I and our team like for you to get out of this webinar, to know at the end of this webinar, to be able to do? So first, we want you to learn what the VAD is, the VISTA assignment description. What is it and how is it used? We also want you to know why it's important, where and what part of the VISTA life cycle that touches, where does that VAD come in, and why is it so important? And then we're also going to talk about, and we want you to understand and identify why difficulties with the VISTA assignment description arise. And then we are going to address those key issues that come up with the VAD and then give you some tips on how to overcome those. So we got a lot in here today, but we're excited to have you with us. Throughout today's presentation, we will be sharing specific tools and resources to help support your work as VISTA supervisors. These strategies and activities have been compiled into a document called The Importance of the VAD in VISTA Project, Supervisor Resources, and that link has been posted to the chat. This list includes tools and resources that include a link in the links to various resources we have on the VISTA campus. This document was also in the registration link that you would have signed up through, but you can also download it here in the chat. I'm going to now turn it over to Amy here in just a second, but we're going to first talk about the VISTA campus because it's one of our main tools that we use. We are going to be referring to the VISTA campus quite a bit. The VISTA campus includes dedicated sections for members, leaders, and supervisors. The supervisors page specifically contains go-to resources to help you manage your VISTA project, connect with supervisor peers, and hopefully answer a lot of the questions that you may have. If you have not visited the VISTA campus yet, please do so right after this session. It has a plethora of resources, and we want you to be able to utilize all the resources that you do have at your fingertips. So now I have the pleasure of turning it over to Amy, who's going to get us kicked off with what exactly is the VISTA assignment description. Amy, take it away.
Thank you, Jessica, and hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with VISTA supervisors, and I know we also have a few leaders on the line. I love working with supervisors and trying to make your job easier. So let's go ahead and jump right in and talk about what is a VAD. Let's define this. So first off, let's define what VAD actually stands for. And VAD stands for VISTA Assignment Description. So the VAD is a document that really details the activities a VISTA member will perform during their year of service, and it really is the foundation on which the entire VISTA experience is built. So presenting your VISTA with a strong VAD from the start ensures that they know exactly what they'll be doing. VISTA sponsors or supervisors, folks like you, are required to fill out a VAD form for each VISTA member who serves on a VISTA project. VADs are unique, so for each year of the project, you will have a unique VAD. So if you have a 3-year project, it will require 3 separate VADs. Similarly, projects with several VISTAs will require a unique VAD for each VISTA member. But note, although the VAD is customized for each VISTA member, That does not mean that the VAD is unique. It might be that you have a similar VAD for various members that is customized to their skills and their assignment. And then finally, a VAD, let's really unpack what this thing is. It is both a position description for the member and it's also a work plan. So thinking about most jobs, there's usually a position description that's used for recruitment purposes and then a work plan that informs what the employee would be doing from day to day. So the VAD is really a hybrid of both a work plan and a position description. It's used for recruiting as well and also for tracking members' performance and other performance for the project throughout the year of service. So let's look specifically at what a VAD does. First off, a well-written VAD for each VISTA member helps, again, translate the outputs and outcomes that you've talked about in your project application into a realistic set of activities. The VAD also details project priorities, organizational and community challenges, and the purpose of the project through the objectives which are included in your VAD. The VAD also guides the member and supervisor throughout the year, which is one of the reasons why it's so important, and we'll talk more about that guidance. In addition, the VAD can be adapted as the project evolves and the unique strengths and challenges of your community or your VISTA become apparent. We like to emphasize that the VAD is a living document that's tailored to the needs of the community and the organization. So VADs can and often do change, but with some limits. So just keep in mind that significant changes to a VAD should be discussed with your CNCS state office before you make those changes. So another piece on why the VAD matters so much. First off, the VAD really matters because it's essential to recruitment and selection. So from the beginning, you're going to be using that VAD before your member comes on. It's used to recruit and select candidates for your position, and it should be shared with applicants during the recruitment phase, just as you would share a job description with an employee. It's also used as a tool for screening and selection because you want to make sure that the applicant you select has the skills and talents needed to fulfill the VAD. Next up, the VAD matters because it supports a VISTA candidate's preparation for service at the pre-service orientation training, otherwise known as the PSO. So at PSO, VADs are used as a learning and orientation tool, and every member should come to PSO with their VAD in hand, or someone like Jessica will help them track it down. And just know that members spend the majority of one of the days at PSO focusing on their VAD, and it's also a major focus of the first week of the online PSO as well. The VAD also indicates project priorities, organizational and community challenges, and the purpose of the project. So the VAD really does help the VISTA identify a course of action and a time frame for their tasks, while at the same time it helps the supervisor monitor the member's progress towards accomplishing the tasks outlined in the VAD. And then finally, the VAD is used by the CNCS state office as a tool to hold projects and VISTA members accountable for their assignments and also accountable for what the project said it was going to do with VISTA resources. So that's an overview of what a VAD is and why it's important. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jessica, who's going to go over some of the key elements of a VAD. Take it away, Jessica.
Thank you, Amy. So we're going to use sample VADs as our basis for examples in this session. So the organization in the sample is called Wakita Community Services, or WCS for short, and they run a youth mentoring program. 2 sample VADs are available on the VISTA campus and are also used at supervisor training. Rachel is sharing the URL right now in the chat for the WCS example that we're going to be using. Just an important note as we go through here. the VADs, all VADs must be created through your eGrants account. We're not going to talk about eGrants in this session, but we will note some points about the VAD creation that impact its use in eGrants. But we do have other webinars that we've done specifically around eGrants and how to, tips for working with eGrants with the VAD. So we're not going to touch on that here, but just as a heads up, all VADs must be created through your eGrants account. And the key elements of VAD, a complete VAD includes goals, objectives, and activities that a member is expected to complete in order to satisfy project needs. Each VAD you create requires a distinct title. And if you happen to be creating multiple similar VADs, you should consider creating a naming system. This might include attributing the year or creating a job number in addition to the descriptive title. Just as a hint there. And a tip for that is when creating multiple VADs for VISTAs doing similar work, you can save time by copying and pasting some elements of the text into those VADs. Still needs its own title. Each has to have its own unique title, but you can copy and paste some of that to help save you some time. The VAD requires you to input project details such as the project name, project period, number of members, and other information. And much of this information can be found in your project application. And conveniently, your project application is available within your organization's eGrants account, so you can easily copy and paste the appropriate content. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the project goal, the first element here, the project goal. So VADs need to reflect the following. They must demonstrate the poverty mission of the project, and they must demonstrate activities that clearly show how the VISTA will build capacity, whether that's at the organization level or in the community. So, for example, in this VAD that you see on the screen here, the poverty mission is illustrated by the focus on education, social, and emotional support needed to break the cycle of poverty. It's clearly listed there. This VISTA will build the capacity of the organization and the community by developing a sustainable volunteer recruitment and management system for that mentoring program. Another tip here we just want to give you, sorry, that on the screen, is copy and paste the goal of the project directly from the goal statement that you put in your project application. A lot of the stuff that you're going to need for the VAD and for other elements of your, whether it's reporting or, as I said, the VAD, you can find in your project application. So if you don't have a copy of that, get that, because it really has a lot of great information. So next we're going to move on to objectives. And the objectives that you identify for the VAD should articulate what the VISTA will achieve during his or her assignment. Each VAD should include more than one objective and include completion dates for each objective. And the objectives should form a bridge between your goal statements and the VISTA's activities. So a sample objective from our sample VAD. By August 19th, 2018, set up outreach systems and build partnerships with community organizations, and then develop targeted marketing materials to spread the word about the mentor program. So that's an objective. It's stating what they will achieve. Now, let's jump to the activities. The activities section of the VAD identifies more specifically what the VISTAs will be doing to achieve that objective. So in this one, first, identify the skills, abilities, and experiences sought in volunteer mentors by January 30th, 2018. It has that timeline for them to get that done. It's realistic, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So that's one activity. Next activity is write volunteer task descriptions that include qualifications, activities, benefits, the time commitment, and other expectations by February 28th, 2018. Once again, specific on what the activity is going to do, what the VISTA member is going to do, and a timeline to get that stuff done. So once again, another tip we want to share with you is to begin, you're going to want to start with the performance milestones and the outputs and inputs, outputs and outcomes that you identified in your application, and edit those into appropriate activities. So once again, we're gonna hammer this home. Look at that project application that you filled out, because it's really informative for these VADs. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amy. Amy is going to now that we've kind of looked at what the VAD is, why it's important, what are the elements of a VAD, we're going to start talking about now what are those difficulties that we see and how to really overcome them. So Amy's going to kick us off here, and she's going to talk about our first difficulty.
Thank you, Jessica. And so now that we have a nice basis for what the VAD is and why it's important, we wanted to spend some time talking about some difficulties that have come up. So what we did is we spoke with both corporation state office staff, we talked to supervisor orientation facilitators, as well as VISTA staff like Jessica from DC, and we came up with a set of common difficulties that we often see across the board with VADs, and we thought it'd be helpful to share those with you so that you'll be aware of them and can hopefully get ahead of this in your projects. So we came up with 4 common difficulties that we'll outline today, and those include VAD language that is unclear or unrealistic, difficulties coordinating among sites for multi-site projects, incorrect placeholder VADs get uploaded into the e-grant system, and then finally the supervisor who inherits a VAD when they come on. So to kick us off, Jessica's going to share our first difficulty along with some tips on how to address it. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thanks, Amy. So as Amy mentioned, our first difficulty is that the VAD language is unclear or unrealistic. So we have a quote here from a VISTA supervisor trainer, someone who does training at supervisor orientation. I once reviewed a VAD that asked the member to recruit 150 new youth mentors within their project year, yet they didn't have a mentoring program in place or understand the difficulties of recruiting mentors for a year-long commitment. So this is really gets to what we're talking about with unclear or unrealistic. This really talks about the unrealistic part of this. Unclear or unrealistic activities or expectations can set members out, set them up for a bad year. They can set them out on the wrong foot, which we don't want. At PSO, we get people who talk to us, we get VISTA candidates who come to us with questions about their VAD and what it's really asking them to do. Some of them are confused, some of them feel overwhelmed. And communicating very specific goals and activities to your VISTA members and your VISTA candidates is essential. And there shouldn't be much room for interpretation. Now, that's not to say that you can't, that you should put in the VAD, you will write a 2-page paper every 2 weeks with this many words. Like, doesn't need to be that specific, but really it should be pretty clear what you're asking your VISTA members to do. And in addition, these goals and activities should also be realistic if you want your VISTA member and your project to succeed. So let's talk about a few reasons why this happens, why VADs are unclear or why they're unrealistic. So first, let's talk about what we mean by unclear. VAD language is often unclear when the description of a member activity is either broad or general. So for example, the quote I just read skips ahead to having a large group of mentors, yet it does not specifically state a clear path for where to start or how to build out the various components of that successful mentoring program. Also, a lack of due dates for each activity can create confusion around prioritization. Without specific timelines, a member may not know where to start or by when a particular objective and activity should be completed. Your VISTA member wants to know when I need to get this done, how do I make my time useful, what do I need to prioritize, because they don't want to be focusing on one thing and then you ask them, you know, a month into service, where is this, and they haven't started working on it because they didn't know that that was more time sensitive. Also, another reason this happens is that tasks are unrealistic for a 1-year VISTA project. Recruiting 150 mentors in 1 year would require a strong program infrastructure and a dedicated outreach person. I mean, can you imagine building a program and finding 150 people to fill committed mentoring roles within 1 year? Make sure that when you're reading it and when you're developing it, does it sound realistic to you? So we're going to do quickly a closer look. We're going to take a closer look and do a sample VAD review. We're going to look at the objectives, activities, and completion dates included in our sample VAD to see why this is a strong example of a good VAD. So we're doing a live run through here. because we want to show you the elements and we can't just fit it onto one screen. So this is our VAD sample. As you can see, the first objective lists a date by which the member will complete the assessment of the current recruitment and matching systems. It says December 20th, 2000, fill in the blank there. Then the supervisor breaks down the member activities for each objective and includes sub-activities that will help the member achieve the overall objective. Notice that the member activities also have target dates for completion. Once again, it's letting them know what's a priority, when things need to be completed by, how to manage their time. The second objective in this example outlines members' activities for setting up the outreach system, building partnerships, and creating materials. Again, the activities for the member are very specific and doable within the project timeline. For example, the supervisor provides targets for attending community events and partnering with other organizations, as well as dates for completion of materials. The VAD might need to be adapted for the member or circumstances, but at least milestones are laid out as a starting point for the year. So we wanted to just show you why that this is a strong VAD, what we mean by what is a clear VAD, what's realistic. So now, what are tips that we can share with you on how to overcome some of these difficulties? So here are a few tips to overcoming unclear or unrealistic VADs. First, ensure that the member activity is written with a clear focus. By that we mean one specific topic for each activity. Make sure not to bundle multiple activities together because that can be a little overwhelming. Also, break down complex activities into subtasks and list these tasks in an order that supports step-by-step guidance. You should also provide the specific timeline for each activity so that the member can meaningfully prioritize activities. And then, honestly, do a reality check to ensure that the activities could be reasonably done and accomplished by one individual during their year. Do this with yourself and then also with the VISTA member when they're finally at site. Have that conversation with them, have it as an open session with them to be able to discuss their concerns or how they're feeling about this. But doing a reality check is also is really important once you've initially developed the VAD. So that's our first difficulty, and Amy is now going to share our second one, which is coordinating among sites. So Amy, you want to talk about that second difficulty?
Thank you, Jessica. So this is the second difficulty that came up, and we received a question from one of our supervisor webinar evaluations, and the person wrote, how should the intermediary help sub-site supervisors write a meaningful VAD with tangible outcomes and clear deliverables that make sense to prospective VISTAs, site stakeholders, and the supervisor? So this is a big question for many of you. So let's go ahead and unpack this issue and look at it a little more closely. So coordinating among multiple sites or even just multiple individuals on a project to help manage your VISTA project can be overwhelming. And so for intermediary and multi-site supervisors, you have different pressures than our single-site project directors or sub-site supervisors. So as an intermediary or multi-site supervisor, you have the challenge of coordinating expectations and policies around the VAD across multiple sites, even in multiple cities and states. So this is a big deal. So in addition, as the intermediary, you are responsible for creating the VADs for all of your sites, and this added pressure can often lead to our next reason for coordination and why it can be difficult, and that is unclear roles for VAD development. So some intermediaries and multi-site project directors choose to involve their sub-sites in the planning and drafting of the VADs. In contrast, other intermediaries may choose to complete the VADs themselves and then share the VAD with their sub-site projects once it's completed. So there are different sort of ways to go about doing this. So no matter how you choose to engage your sites, the task of creating and coordinating VADs and ensuring that everyone is on the same page is crucial to your project success. And again, it can be difficult if someone doesn't know their role. So role clarity is really important here. Another reason coordination can be difficult is if your sub-site supervisors are untrained about the VAD. Maybe they simply have not been provided the support they need to successfully implement the VAD at their site. I did see in the registration questions one person saying, I didn't even know what a VAD was until recently. And it's sometimes not just that the sub-sites are untrained about the VAD, but as we know, VISTA is a unique program that is different from an internship or a job, and it includes particular policies and procedures that your sub-sites might not be aware of and that they will need to adhere to. So again, it might just be they don't know what they don't know. And then also a quick note on the side of supporting your sub-sites. We're now accepting sub-site supervisors at supervisor orientation around the country. So if you do have sub-site supervisors who have not gone to training, please work with your corporation state office to learn more about how to get your sub-site supervisors to a training in the near future. So we've talked a lot. I think there's a lot of wisdom on this call, so let's go ahead and hear from you. So we're going to do a chat today, and we want to hear from you. What have you found to be successful when collaborating to develop or refine VADs? So for those of you that have to collaborate, what have you found to be successful? So what you'll do is you might need to open the chat panel by clicking on the icon in the upper right that says chat. And then you'll go and you'll choose to send to all participants, or if you're on a phone, to everyone. And then just go ahead and enter your ideas in the chat panel. What have you found to be successful when collaborating to develop or refine VADs? So we'll just give ourselves a little bit of wait time here. Those of you who are trainers know about this. It takes people a few minutes to get their thoughts together. I know we have some intermediaries on this call. So Marilyn says, talking with the VISTAs about problems with the previous, I'm guessing, VAD. Diana says, weekly check-in meetings with the VISTA. This is excellent. Anybody have experience working with sub-sites that they'd like to share on strategies you've used? Rebecca's state office has been helpful, as well as former supervisors and staff, especially in determining timelines. Excellent. So talk to the people that are familiar with your project, especially if you're new, to find out what's worked, what's maybe not worked, and what a realistic timeline might look like. We have a bunch of tips for you, but I'm so curious to see what people put in here. Angela reviews the VAD in detail with the sub-site supervisor. So she's offering that support that we know the sub-site supervisors really need to be successful. Oh, I think I just saw one from Robin that says they do training for our sites before they apply to be a site, so a VAD training. And we do have some resources for VAD training we'll share in a minute. Wonderful. Thank you, Robin, for that. Let's see, Brittany meets with sub-site supervisors to get their ideas and goals for their projects, and then takes that input and puts it into their VAD template, and then sends it over to the supervisor for review and additional information. And then finally, she forwards that draft of that VAD to the state office for their comments, which is part of the process. And then they refine it until everyone's clear with the project goals and tasks. So that's an excellent example of how to work in conjunction with your sub-sites to make sure they both understand it and you're getting the correct activities and buy-in from your sub-sites. Plus, you also have the expertise of your state office. Excellent. So Christina does one-on-one meetings with her supervisors so that they understand the agency and the potential of the project, giving them ideas from other successful projects. These are excellent, you guys. And then Michael, it's important to train the sub-sites. They don't often agree with the original VAD if they come into the process late. So again, that theme of buy-in with your sub-sites. These are great, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and move on, but if you have other ideas that come up, feel free to put them into chat. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the tips that we heard from our stakeholders on how to overcome this difficulty of coordinating among multiple sites to develop VADs. So as we mentioned, and we see this theme here, intermediaries are responsible for training their sub-site supervisors and should offer a training to orient those sub-site supervisors to the VAD and to the project roles. So for example, you want to share maybe some of the VAD resources that are available on the VISTA campus and do a walkthrough with them as a team. And of course, we have some tools that we've developed for you that outline the various resources that are available on the VISTA campus. And also we have a template that you can build your VAD agenda for training your sites about the VAD. And Rachel's going to go ahead and drop that into the chat right now. It's called Training Your Sub-Site Supervisors About the VAD, pretty direct title, pretty obvious, so that you'll have something to start from for that VAD training. Also, as you saw in the chat, it's important for intermediaries and sub-site supervisors to collaborate to write and or customize the VAD for each site to make sure it meets the site's needs and you have that buy-in from your site supervisors. And then as we talked about, everyone does it different. Some folks write the VAD and send it to their sub-sites. Others do it in collaboration with the sub-sites. But no matter how you structure that writing process, it's just important to collaborate. If you don't currently engage your sub-sites in development of the VAD, we recommend that you look into ways to do that. And of course, if you have questions about how best to structure that process, please feel free to contact your corporation state office. And also talk to each other. We have forums on the VISTA campus for supervisors where you can post your ideas or questions and get peer support. So if you haven't done it yet, now's a great time to start working with your sub-sites. Some other tips, use templates and examples as we heard in the chat. That helps maintain quality across the board for your VADs. For example, you might consider completing the top part of the VAD as well as the project goal and even perhaps an objective in advance of sharing your template with your sites. You may also want to send a sample of a quality VAD. I think we heard that in the chat as well, that they can reference when they're writing their VAD. So just helping them sort of not have to stare at a blank page, and then you're also going to make sure you get the correct objectives in there from the start. And then one of our CNCS state offices shared with us that the majority of their longtime intermediary sponsors provide a template for their sites to use. It's sort of a fill-in-the-blank template that helps them build their VAD. And it almost is a mini work plan that they provide. So it can really help not only helps the state office see the connection the VAD will have to poverty, but it also feeds into the performance measures the site will report on based on the application. And I know many of you said, how do we link our VAD to our performance measures or outcomes? And one of the ways that you can do that is, as Jessica said, using your project application and mirroring that language in your VAD so that it's all consistent across the board. And then it's important for VISTA that all sites and members see how they feed into the sponsor's application. So again, the project application. And then finally, the sponsor and the site will then work together to craft the final version of the VAD, again, that collaboration, at which time they submit the VAD to the state office for approval. So all of your VADs need to be approved, and that's important because you won't be able to officially recruit until you have an approved VAD. So as we mentioned, VISTA Campus has a variety of resources and tools available for you. So check out the tools that Rachel's sharing in the chat, and we'll also have a copy of that list for you. It's posted now, and we'll email it to you later. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jessica, who's going to introduce our third difficulty, which is incorrect or placeholder VADs. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you, Amy. So this quote on the screen here is from one of my colleagues. I promise it's not me. But they say, at PSO, there are often VISTAs with incomplete or incorrect VADs, or VADs that have not been uploaded at all. Having the correct VAD at PSO is essential to completing the PSO curriculum in a manner that is most effective. So in general, you need to know what the position is you're recruiting for before you begin to recruit for it. You, or maybe the person before you, applied for VISTA resources because there was a need identified in the community, and you saw that VISTA resources would be able to help with that need. At the time that the application was written or submitted, you probably had an idea of what they were going to do, and hopefully had an idea of what their tasks would be, what their objectives would be, what their role would be. So it's important to have a job description or a VAD developed before you start recruiting, so that you can tailor your recruitment and opportunity listings in the best possible way to get the best qualified candidates and applicants, I should say. But we do know that the e-grant system, as well as other factors, are not always conducive to getting a VAD developed before you can start recruiting. We know that there are certain delays in recruitment that can be caused because of the VAD. So we know that projects sometimes create a placeholder VAD, and what we mean by when we say placeholder VAD is just like a VAD template, just a generic VAD, is not tailored specific to a certain position as a VISTA member at that organization. It's just a very generic placeholder VAD that is not the real VAD. So projects sometimes create placeholder VADs in order to post an opportunity listing with the intent of uploading the correct VAD once they have more time to develop it. Those of you familiar with the e-grant system know that you have to have a VAD in place before you can post your opportunity listings and start recruiting through the My AmeriCorps system. So this is sometimes why people do those placeholder VADs. And this is sometimes why people come to PSO with bad VADs, VADs that are not the real VADs, that are not very clear, that are not really helpful when VISTA members are at PSO and trying to learn what they're supposed to be doing for their year of service. So those VISTA members bring those VADs to PSO where we analyze them. At PSO, we have a half-a-day session just devoted to the VAD. And we want them to be able to get a clear picture. So they bring their VADs to us, and they're ready to learn. They're ready to get a clear idea of what they're going to be doing and what this stuff means. And they also use that VAD to identify areas in which they may need additional training and support, which they list in their individual development plans that we work with them at PSO about. So how do you overcome this? How do you overcome having those bad VADs, those placeholder VADs, or those incorrect VADs? So ideally, and what you should strive for, is to develop your VADs early so that the lack of a finalized VAD is not a barrier to recruitment. You should work to ensure that you have the correct VAD created and uploaded into eGrants before you post your opportunity listing and begin recruiting. As we said, we know that there are many times where it's not possible to do that, to have the VAD developed before you can start recruiting. So here are some tips to ensure that the correct VAD gets to your VISTA member or candidate, I should say, as soon as possible. So first, set up some Outlook tasks or other tools to update the VAD within 2 weeks of a placeholder VAD being posted. So if you have to do a placeholder VAD, which in all honesty should be a rarity, you should really not make that a habit. It should be only in dire straits that you do this. You really need to have that correct VAD developed on time. But if you do get into this situation, set a task 2 weeks from when you posted that placeholder VAD to say, within 2 weeks, I'm going to have that new VAD ready. I'm going to have that new VAD uploaded. It's going to be ready to go. Set an Outlook task, some other tracking tool for you that will hold you and your project accountable. Project directors, whether you're an intermediary or a multi-site director, or even for single-site supervisors, you need to have a process, whether that's clear communication as to why the VAD isn't finalized, when you anticipate it being finalized, and then a timeline for getting it ready and finalized. You need to have that in place for you and for your sub-site supervisors if a placeholder VAD needs to be created. This process should include deadlines for when the correct VAD needs to be submitted to the project director and clear communication protocol with a VISTA candidate and member if they were given a VAD that is now updated. Sometimes we also have people who come to PSO who have multiple VADs. So there needs to be clear communication with those candidates that say, hey, this is now your correct VAD. Go with this one. It's in the system now. And all candidates need to have a correct VAD before they attend PSO. As I mentioned, we discussed the VAD in great detail, so it's crucial for them to have a correct VAD at PSO. And intermediaries and multi-site directors, you need to hold your sub-sites accountable. And your state office will hold you accountable for getting a correct VAD uploaded into eGrants. So we know that there are some struggles with the eGrant system, with the recruiting process, that can cause this to happen, but hopefully with these tips you can try to avoid that, and if necessary to do this, have some tips on getting that placeholder VAD replaced with the correct VAD as soon as possible. So Amy's going to now talk to us about the fourth and final difficulty.
Thanks, Jessica. So our fourth difficulty that we often see is the supervisor who inherits a VAD. And I thought this was a good quote. My biggest challenge with VADs has been taking on the supervisory role from another and having to revise an existing VAD. So we hear this challenge a lot. Supervisors who are new or inherit a VISTA project often need to get grounded in the details of the VISTA program as well as this thing called a VAD. They also sometimes need to revise an existing VAD that may not be aligned with the current reality of the project or the skills of the member. So this is kind of a big one for us. So let's go ahead and kick off this section with a chat and a raised hand. So we'd like to know if you have ever experienced inheriting a VAD that was not your VAD originally, your meaning that was not, you either moved into the position or you took over for someone else or you were brand new to the agency. So to raise your hand to indicate if you have ever inherited a VAD, we'll just call it that, there should be a hand icon next to your name in the participant panel. Oh yeah, people are getting it. And raise your hand. Wow, there's a lot. There's a lot of you that have inherited a VAD. So if you did inherit a VAD or moved into a project midstream, give us some ideas of the ways that you overcame this difficulty. How did you deal with inheriting the VAD? What strategies did you use? What questions did you ask? So for those of you who have inherited a VAD, what did you do to overcome this? And I'll open up my chat here and see what we got. I'll give you guys a few minutes of think time, or in webinar world, that means a few seconds. So if you inherited a VAD, what did you do to overcome that challenge? And what you'll want to do is make sure you send to all participants. I am not going to get this name right. Mariekler asked questions about the final goal of the project, which was quite educational and became a training for her or him. Yeah, so what is the goal? I mean, sometimes we don't even know what the project is supposed to accomplish, especially if the VAD is unclear. So asking all those questions, what is this thing? If you don't know what VISTA is, get on the VISTA campus and start poking around. Talk with your state office or your intermediary and ask them to give you an orientation. Any other strategies folks have used when they inherited a VAD to tackle this particular challenge? So for summer, most of my work can be shaped according to the VAD. The main thing is that I review the VAD in detail with my VISTA to try to ensure that our work fits within it. So working with your VISTA member as well, because they may have information to share that could be useful for you. Elaine, I asked about the context about the creation of the VAD. So, you know, that's context is project goal. Why did we do this? What's our community need? What capacity building activities are we trying to accomplish? And then also asked about what is working and what isn't working and what the VISTA is doing well with for her VAD. So just really, it's like any new job, right? Where are we at? What's working? What's not working? How's the member working out? What do they need? Really getting to know that VAD and the context for your project. Great, so I'm going to go ahead and move on so we have time for Q&A, but if you guys have any other ideas about how you've overcome inheriting a VAD, please feel free to share those with your network in the chat panel. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the tips that we came up with for inheriting a VAD. First of all, the #1 best piece of advice I can share, again, is to get clarity on the overall goal for your VISTA project so that you can put your inherited VAD into context. So what is the goal we're trying to accomplish? Again, to start, you might want to review your project application, which is available in eGrants. If you don't have access to eGrants, which some sub-sites may not, please request a copy of your project application from your intermediary or sponsoring organization, or you can also request it from your state office. But if you have an intermediary, that's probably your first place to go. And then be sure, as some of you have indicated in the chat, be sure to ask if anything has changed since the inception of the project. As you know, these are multi-year projects. You may also, again, want to get a brief history of the project. These are things you guys already told us to find out what has gone well or what's been challenging, and then also how the members have reacted to those particular VADs as well. And then just to reiterate, I saw questions come in through the chat. The VAD is a living document, so it can be revised in collaboration with your VISTA and your corporation's state office. So we know that sometimes circumstances change, new and urgent needs arise, VISTAs have skills that you want to utilize, and resources sometimes change. So again, they can be altered to better utilize the strengths of your members and to meet the needs of your community. Just be sure to check with your state office before you make those changes. And then finally, one more note on changes. The overall goal cannot change, obviously, because that's the goal of your project, but specific objectives, activities, and steps can be adjusted. So again, just check in with your state office before you make those changes. What we don't want to see is changes in your VAD that affect performance measures and how data is gathered. So that's why it's a good idea to check in with the state office. And then again, Rachel's going to share a couple of resources that you might find helpful when adapting an inherited VAD or any VAD in general. All right, so that's our last of our 4 difficulties that we identified. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jessica, who's going to walk us through a brief reflection, and then we'll move on to Q&A. So go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you, Amy. So we're going to, as Amy said, we want to give you enough time for Q&A, so we're going to do this very briefly, rapid fire. What's one thing that you will do based on what you learned in this webinar? So maybe it's as simple as I'm going to go and look at the campus, like Diana just said. Maybe it's I'm going to get a copy of my project application. Maybe I'm going to look at all my VADs to make sure that they're clear. Just list some of those things that you plan on doing based on this webinar. It looks like a lot of things are coming in about visiting the campus, looking at the links that we've provided. And I love that. Amanda, she's all enthusiastic. Get a copy of that project application. Exactly. Can't stress enough how important that is. So yeah, keep them coming. As you keep listing the great things that you're going to be doing, what we're going to do next is we're going to start Q&A. But before that, we would like to ask you to complete an evaluation. We want to know what you thought about this webinar, what you liked, what you want more of. So we do, we take these to heart. We want to give you what you want. And so we look at these to develop our content, to develop the ways that we present material to you. So please take just a few minutes to fill out that application and let us know. Like I said, we really do take that to heart, and we want to be able to give you what you want as VISTA supervisors. So while you're doing that, we're going to start the Q&A. We did have some things come in over the Q&A box, but I do want to invite our operator to come on and just let us know how you can ask a question by the phone. Operator, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. We'll begin the question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment from the phones, please press *1. Make sure your phone is unmuted and record your name to introduce your question. To withdraw your request, you may press *2. Once again, for a question or comment from the phones, press *1 at this time, and we'll stand by for questions or comments.
Thank you so much. So while we wait for questions to come in over the phone, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that came in through the Q&A. So the first question we had is by Michael. He said, do VADs need to be modified in the e-grant system? So yes. So VADs need to be modified in there. That's where you are going to submit your VAD. You're going to do all of that. If it sounds like when you say modify, I think if you need to make changes to the VAD, if that's the case, then yes, you still need to do that through e-grants. So if you have any questions about e-grants, there is on the supervisor page of the VISTA Campus, you can click on the VISTA assignment, and it talks about, workarounds for doing that, like ways to, work with the e-grant system, which can be a little wonky sometimes, to get that information in there. So yes, thank you for that. One other question here Diana asked, and it's a question that I didn't expect, so I appreciate that, Diana. She said, I'm a supervisor at one site, so she only manages one site. So slides 19 and 20 are not applicable to me, correct? So slides 19 and 20 really talked about that coordination and communication between subsites when developing the VAD. So yeah, so Diana, and anybody else on this webinar, if you are a single site, if you only have one project, then you don't need to coordinate with other sites, so lucky you on that one. That might not be a difficulty that you're running into. But yeah, so thank you for that question, Diana. Let's jump to the phone quickly just to see if anything is over the phone. Operator, do you have any questions over the phone?
We do have one question. One moment.
Wonderful, thanks.
Thank you. And we do have a question or comment coming from Ruth. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Hello. I don't have a computer, so I have to do this strictly by phone, so I can't comment on any of your questions or answers, you wanted.
Okay.
So I just want you to know that I am listening to all of it. I just can't comment to you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Ruth. We're happy that you joined us.
Well, I've been on this. I didn't know, since I'm computer illiterate, I have to depend on someone to tell me what to do, so I don't know if this is the right one or not.
Well, hopefully, are you VISTA supervisor with questions about VADs? If you are, then definitely in the right place.
Well, he said, hang on.
Yeah, this is Larry Long. She's trying to find out about her timesheet. She's not in the webinar.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Bye. All right, so let's go over some more questions that have come in through the chat. Let's take a look here. Trying to sit through here. Amy, do you see anything while I'm looking for others? I want to make sure I don't miss any, but you may have some flagged.
Yeah, we have a whole list here, Jessica, for you. Let me go ahead and go to our list. So people put in from in the chat. One person asked if they need to be modified in the e-grant system. We already covered that. Another person asked, can a VAD be changed for the VISTA volunteer and their needs?
Thank you. So yeah, so I saw a couple of those. We'll address that because Amy, I know, touched on it. Questions around can it be modified? Can it be changed to the volunteer's needs? Can it be flexible? So yeah, so all of that goes to what Amy had mentioned earlier, that yes, the VAD should be considered a living document, and we understand that from the time that you wrote it, the application originally, maybe things have changed and maybe the VAD needs to be tweaked a little bit. As Amy mentioned, you can update the VAD in conjunction with your project director and your state office, but the goal of the project cannot change. That's the one thing that can't change. So yeah, it can be flexible, it can change to the needs of the project, but you do want to work in conjunction with your state office to get that officially updated because they will need to approve that. Another question here, and it comes from someone who identified themselves as a sub-site supervisor. They said, if you want to continue the project for a second year and have completed the application and the VAD process, how long will it take to find out if you have been approved? So thank you for that question. Because you're a sub-site supervisor, you would need to talk to your project director. Your project director works directly with your state office, and they, are relaying deadlines to them, approval processes through them. And so the first person you want to contact is your project director. Because intermediaries can be very different, their processes can be a little different, and because they work directly with the state office, there's not one set of like it takes 2 weeks to find out or it takes 1 month. So I don't have a standard timeline, but you should talk with your project director to kind of see where that approval process is. I do just want to be cognizant of our time. We are right at the top of the hour, and I do want to respect your time because I know that you're very busy supervisors. We will be here to answer the remainder of the questions. So if you did have a question that's not been answered and can stay, wonderful, because we are going to go ahead and answer those, but we do understand that some of you may need to drop off. So let's move on to the next question. Question here, what if the volunteer, which I'm assuming you mean the VISTA, is not as excited about the VAD after they applied to the position? So I am assuming that when they applied and you interviewed them, they seemed super pumped, super excited, but then once they have the VAD in hand, they kind of don't seem as excited anymore. So definitely first thing you want to check is make sure that what you posted and what's in that VAD line up. Because you definitely, we're going to get into that unclear VAD, because maybe you posted a really stellar opportunity listing, you said this is going to be the greatest thing ever, and then they get their VAD and it's not exactly what they thought they were going to be doing, or it's not what that conversation that they had with you during the interview about what the position would be like. You want to make sure that the information that you've disseminated to them, both when they were applying and in that, those listings and in their VAD, match up. If they don't, then that's maybe something you're going to want to tweak, because that could be understandably a cause of some maybe disappointment if they thought they would be doing one thing and now they're going to be doing something different. If they do match, if you said exactly what they'd be doing and nothing's changed, you may want to have a conversation with the VISTA member to determine, hey, what's changed? We talked about this a couple months ago when you applied and you seemed really excited. Just want to see how you're feeling, just want to, touch base and see kind of how you feel about this. Definitely check those two different things to kind of see where that drop in enthusiasm is coming from. Let's go to the operator. Are there any questions over the phone?
And I'm currently showing no questions at this time. Again, as a reminder, it is *1 and record your name, and to withdraw that request, it is *2. I'll stand by for further questions or comments.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have another question here asking if we train VISTA members on the performance measures. Do you stress how important that is? When do you talk to them about performance measures? Is it during PSO, before, or after? So, we don't, and Amy, please jump in here. So the VISTA, during PSO, and we don't talk to them necessarily, we talk very briefly about the performance measures. We talk briefly about reporting, and all of those sorts of things. We don't go in depth on it. And the reason for that is because VISTA members are not responsible for reporting. You are responsible for reporting. Your VISTA members can help with reporting, can help, obviously if they're the ones recruiting volunteers, they can help with data collection, but they should never be actually doing the reporting. So that's one of the reasons for that. So we talk about it very briefly, and we talk about it, these are, this is kind of what's measured. This is how, success is measured here. But because they're not directly responsible for reporting, we don't go in depth. Amy, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I will say that I think the way that the VISTAs would see the connection between the performance measures is in that day that they look at their VAD. So I think that's even another reason why it's so important that your VAD articulates the kind of activities that will help you meet those performance measures, because really what the VISTA does is they drill down on the VAD, and the VAD should mirror activities that will meet your performance measures. So that's where that connection happens. It's more practical and less about the big picture, but more about what they'll be doing that will then lead to meeting those performance measures.
Thank you, Amy. And we do have, I do just want to touch base on one thing. We do have we have the VISTA Impact app, or it's the VISTA Impact reporting tool that can allow your VISTA members to track the things that they're doing as VISTA members, how many volunteers they recruit, how many funds they've leveraged, those sorts of things. In real time, there's an app for that, and they can send you those reports at any time during their service. And you can find out more about that on the VISTA campus, but that's another thing. So, having them start out right away on that VISTA Impact app and having them be used to collecting the data that you're going to need eventually for your reports is something that you're definitely going to want to do from the beginning, from when they start service, because it's only going to help you when reporting comes. Let's take a look here. Any questions over the phone?
And I'm currently showing no questions or comments from the phone.
Wonderful. Another person here asked, it's a clarifying question of a supervisor must upload the VAD online. I am in the second year of a hopefully 3-year project and did not upload my VAD last year. So I think that this is, Diana, I think you may have been the one who identified yourself as a sub-site supervisor. And if that's the case, that's probably why. It probably was the project director who uploaded that VAD on your behalf. So you probably submitted it to them, and they uploaded it in eGrants. It does have to go through eGrants. It's assigned to the VISTA members account. So it could just be that you worked with your project director, and that's why you didn't have to submit it online. All right, any other questions that I may have missed, Amy?
We're not showing anything else. Anything else, Rachel?
No, we are not showing any other questions on chat or Q&A.
Someone did ask in the chat if we could share the link for the Impact app. I am getting that ready right now. I will say that we are upgrading the app currently to meet standards for privacy and security, so it's not working at this very moment. You cannot access it, but it is in the process of being updated. So I just wanted to let folks know, if you go to that page and you're not able to get into it, just know that we are working on it, and please come back and check it out at a later date.
And Amy, I did find that link, so I just posted it and you did before me, so I'm going to stop talking now because you found it before I did. All right, well, it sounds like there may not be any additional questions, so I do once again want to thank you all for joining us today. We sure hope that if you have any other additional questions about VADs, that you let us know. You can contact us at vistawebinars@cns.gov. Also, reach out to your project director if you're a sub-site, or if you're a sub-site and if you're a project director and have questions, please reach out to your state office. We're always here to help, so any questions that you have, please let us know, and we hope that you can join us again in our next webinar, which will be in September, around member training and professional development. And the next webinar for new VISTA members is actually this Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's called Planning Your Professional Development. So once again, thank you from the AmeriCorps VISTA program. Thank you from our partners at Education Northwest, and thank you VISTA supervisors for all that you do, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.